Good evening, everyone, and I hope you guys are doing pretty good. This is going to be the day 21 of our 90 days SDET interview preparation series on YouTube. Now, before we get started with today's class, let me just address the elephant in the room. A lot of you guys were asking me, Jatin, where are the new lectures? Are you fine? Are you well now? The thing is, I was traveling to Jaipur, and while returning back from Jaipur, I ended up having food poisoning. And it was a very difficult travel time for me. Now, anyways, when I came back home, I started preparing for this particular lecture. And somewhere down the lane, I did not like the whole flow of this particular lecture. So I wanted it to plan it pretty well. When we started recording, my editor actually went sick. So again, there was a delay popping up over there. Now, here's the thing, guys. Whenever we try to release a lecture on this particular channel, we have set certain level of quality checks. The first check is that the lecture should really add some value into your learning. Okay? If it is not going to add a value, I will not be releasing that particular lecture. That's the thing. I get a lot of questions, the interview questions from you guys, and some of these questions are only like a pattern of all the stuff that I have completed or covered up in the series. So I really don't want to again cover up the questions which technically does not add any value to your time. Okay. So we are very much strict in what kind of questions that I will be covering up in this particular series. So it's going to take a little bit of time here and there. Anyways, now for today's class, okay, the whole stuff was to just answer this thing in a more theoretical way, and I can easily wrap it down, okay? But for me, it's really important that if I'm explaining a problem statement, there should be a sample application ready for it. So I was busy creating the application, then we were checking all the scenarios, and then we decided to record this particular class. Anyways, this class is going to be a really interesting one, guys. So please make sure that you watch this particular class till the end. Now, one small request, guys, okay? I see that most of you guys are watching the video, okay? And you guys are technically not subscribed to this particular channel. So please make sure you subscribe to this particular channel. This is really important. The second thing is, make sure you like as well as comment on this particular channel. And if possible, share this particular series with your QA friends. There are a lot of Telegram groups. Okay, you can share it over there. You can share it in the various WhatsApp groups. The simple reason over here is, see, when we are creating a lecture, the economics part of that particular lecture is very high. Okay, because we are supposed to spend a hell lot of time creating the lecture. So I need a lot of support from you guys so that these series actually reach a wider audience. Okay. And if you guys are just watching, you are probably just not commenting, sharing and all, YouTube technically think that this particular lecture does not need a wider audience. So it's not going to promote it off. And somewhere down the lane, like it technically just hurts the whole confidence of the entire team over here. Okay. Now, anyways, that was just what is there in my heart. That's what I wanted to say. So if possible, please share it off with your friends. Now, in today's class, we will be talking about a very interesting problem. This particular interview question was given to me by Palak. Thank you so much for this particular question because it really changes the whole scenario of your UI automation. Okay. Now, over here, the topic is Selenium Network Interception. Okay, I've given the name of this particular topic as Selenium Network Interception. The problem statement over here, guys, is that there is a registration page with fields like username and password and register button. Okay, so you have a page with fields like username, password and register button. When the user clicks the register button, a government API is called in the backend. And $1 is deducted for every API call. We need to automate the registration flow using Selenium WebDriver, but we want to make sure that when we click on the register button during the automation, the real government API should not be called and no money should be deducted. How we can achieve this in automation? All right, this is the interview question. Now, I could have just answered it in much of a theoretical level and wrapped it up. But this question is so interesting that I felt that it requires a demo. Okay. So I have created a proper demo for this particular class. If you notice over here, guys, that I have this particular website which is called as mock API techwithjatin.com. Okay. And it looks like the Aadhaar card website that we have in India. And over here, guys, when you will be entering a username or any random text over here for the password and all, and you click on the register button, you get a pop-up. Okay, you're going to get a pop-up over there. And when you click on the register button, API is technically getting called and some money gets deducted. That's the message you get over here. So over here, observe carefully. I just type over here, let's say Jatin, and password over here is going to be, let's say 1234, something like that. And I'm going to click on the register button. Now observe the output over here. So over here, your registration request for Jatin was processed. The government identity API was called and the following amount has been deducted from your wallet. You just get a message over here. So the status is 283 rupees, that is $1 is getting deducted, and we get a transaction ID popping up over here. Now, just to show you something, if I'm going to right click on the register button, click on inspect. Let's bring this guy to the left. Okay, let's go to the network and observe carefully. I'm going to click on register button again. The moment I click on the register button, there is a verify API which is getting called. Okay, if I'm going to click on the verify API, observe the payload. Okay, I have this username. Okay, if I go to the preview, you will notice that this is the message, amount deducted, 83 rupees is getting deducted, status is success, and there is a transaction 2QG, and the same one transaction ID is getting printed over here. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to test the functionality. We want to check whether the register functionality is working properly, but this API call should not happen. Are you getting the point? Meaning, I am supposed to click on the register button. The pop-up also should happen. I should have some data over here. But verify API, this request should not be made. That's what the interviewer is telling us to do. Okay? Now, just to reiterate the question one more time, read the question properly. As it is written over here that there is a registration page with username and password and the register button. When the user clicks on the register button, the government API is getting called, okay, and $1 is deducted. So every time you're going to do the register, $1 is going to get deducted, okay. We need to automate the registration flow using Selenium, but we want to make sure that when we click on the register button during automation, the real government API should not be called and no money should be deducted. How you're going to automate it? Okay, this is the question. Now, understand something. As we have this particular registration page, the moment you click on the register button, what is going to happen? The browser sends an API request. Okay? The browser sends an API request to this verify endpoint to the government backend server. And this is the data which is getting sent. Okay? Then, once the server processes the request, once the money get deducted and all those things, the server returns us a response. Technically, you get the transaction response back. And it looks something like this. You get a status success, message, citizen registration verified successfully. There's a transaction ID, amount, as well as timestamp and username. The same thing which I just showed you a moment back. Now, take a moment, think about it, how you will be automating this particular scenario. Okay, I can definitely talk about it, but the main thing is you should also have some kind of an idea. Now, most of you guys will be thinking, ki, Arey Jatin, if it is going to be a testing environment, then there should be a verify API, which is going to be more of like the testing environment only. So over there, money is not going to be deducted. Makes sense, na? So over here, if you're going to have a test environment for this particular application, there should be a verify API where the amount might not be getting deducted. But imagine that this API which you see is not something which is controlled by your developers and all. It is technically coming, it's more like a third-party API. It's a government tool, all right? So you don't control that. So these third-party companies, okay, they will give their direct production ready APIs, okay? And you are supposed to use them in your application. So how are you going to do that? Now, some people are going to say that I'm going to do mocking, right? Probably I'm going to mock this entire government API itself, right? That's what you want to do. So most of the answers technically rely that, hey, we will be mocking the government backend server, or you are going to use the government test environment. The problem over there is, see, if the backend changes, okay, if tomorrow there is going to be a new third-party API that you're going to consume, then again, you have to do the mocking for that particular API also. The second thing is use government test environment. You can't do that. You will not be having the access to that, okay? So technically, this approach is not going to work. So what we should be doing over here is that if the browser could intercept that one specific call, okay, if my browser itself could intercept that one specific API call and fake the response, if we are able to do that, then there is no need to change the backend, okay, no test environment needed. The test runs cleanly every time. Okay. So what we will be doing over here is that when we will be clicking on the register button, your browser itself is going to intercept. Okay. And this API request is not going to be processed. It's not going to be going to the server for processing. Your browser is going to return a fake response. So your browser is going to do the interception over here. Are you getting the point? Now, over here, most of you guys will say that, why don't we just hit the main API? This is just a fundamental question I'm taking, because obviously we are not going to hit the main API. But there might be question that what is going to happen if I'm going to hit the main API? Obviously, money is going to get deducted, right? And for every test run, you technically want to pay money to this the APIs, right? That's not the right thing to do. Real servers are not always available. The test environment, staging, and internet may be down. So remember, test should not be dependent on external system. This is one of the most fundamental rule. Any test you write should not be dependent on third-party system. For example, you guys are using, let's say, Google Place API, okay? And in your application, let's say you're having that Ola Uber application and you have that auto suggestion stuff happening over there, right? So over there, if we are using a third-party system or third-party APIs in our application, we are supposed to always return fake response while testing them, okay? Our main system over there in the QA environment and all. So if your test is going to be dependent on these third-party systems, if these systems are down, okay, technically you are going to have a lot of time debugging the main issues, okay? Then auth token is required. Real API need valid token, credentials, or VPN access that CI/CD pipelines may not have. So if your tests are going to run during your CI pipelines and all, so it might not have access to their respective tokens or valid credentials and all. Okay, so that becomes again a challenge. And slow and unpredictable. Network latency makes the test flaky. Let's say the government API itself is running slowly. Most of the time in India it happens, right? So over here, if your government websites, your government applications are running slowly and you are trying to use them in your application, if there is any network latency or any delay from there, your application, okay, is going to get affected. So during your testing part, you should not be relying on them, okay? So you're supposed to mock the response and use them in your test. Now, the solution over here is pretty simple, guys. intercept that one request at browser level using your Chrome DevTools protocol. And this is important. Okay. So we will be using Selenium WebDriver along with DevTools, okay, to solve this particular problem. Now, a lot of time in interview, they can always ask, tell me the challenges that you have faced in your automation framework. So in this entire series, I have covered a lot of different as well as complex UI scenarios. All those scenarios, you're supposed to explain it in your interviews. Don't just stick to your locators and all. I really hate that answer. Okay. Now, over here, understand something. Whenever you're clicking on a button, whenever you're going to click on a button, your browser fires multiple requests. Your browser fires multiple requests. Okay? Not just one. You might think that you're only clicking on the register button and it should be just one request. It's not going to be like that. There will be multiple requests that will be fired, and probably it can be something like pre-flight, XHR, image, script, style sheet, fonts. Okay. So these are going to be the different categories of the request which is there. Now, when I am talking about this verify API, okay, because there is this verify API request which is going to be made, okay, we want to first check, or we want to listen when this request is about to happen. So we want to check whether there is an XHR/fetch. This request is happening or not. Okay, this is the request that we are interested in. So we should be filtering the requests which are happening by the browser. Are you getting the point? Now, a lot of time in interview, they will ask the question, what is pre-flight? Okay, what do you mean by pre-flight? Now, remember this thing. When pre-flight request is happening, pre-flight request checks with the server whether the actual request is allowed or not. So when you're looking at pre-flight, the job of pre-flight is to check with the server whether the actual request, this request which I'll be making, whether it is allowed with the server or not. Okay. So this is something that you want to remember. What is the difference between pre-flight and XHR fetch? In pre-flight, we only check whether the server is going to accept the request or not. In XHR/fetch, we actually make that request. Okay. Now, there are going to be some fundamentals that you should be aware of. Okay. I'll be coming to the code also, don't worry on that. But there are going to be some important fundamentals that you should be remembering about your Selenium interception. Now, the first thing over here, guys, is your Chrome DevTools protocol, CDP. This is something which is going to play a very important role. See, when you're having your WebDriver, with the help of WebDriver, I can actually just click on a button, navigate to a page, enter some text. That's all you can do with WebDriver. But when you have these DevTools, with the help of DevTools, I will be able to actually analyze the network, security, DOM, as well as the performance. So if I want to access the DevTools, the communication channel needs to be open between them. Okay, your WebDriver and the browser. So for that, we technically use the Chrome DevTools protocol. Now, you will notice that whenever we want to inspect the element, what we do is we right click, go to inspect. Now this thing, what you see over here is your Chrome DevTools. Okay, this is your Chrome DevTools. If I want to give any commands to Chrome DevTools, that is going to happen with your CDP, Chrome DevTools protocols. So over here, we want to go to the network tab, okay? And you will notice that there are different types of requests. You have fetch XHR, you have document, you have CSS, JS, font, image, media, manifest, socket, WASM, and other. Now, over here, guys, the moment you're clicking on a register button, what is happening? An API request is happening now. So over here, we are interested in this API request. Okay. So we want to find this particular request in your Chrome DevTools, but not from the UI, not from the browser, but with the help of Selenium WebDriver and your Chrome DevTools protocol. So over here, guys, remember Chrome DevTools protocol, this is the main engine behind your F12. The moment you press F12, this Chrome DevTools open and you will be able to access it with the help of Java code. So when you are looking at CDP, it's the Chrome internal API. Selenium 4 exposes it via DevTools. So we will be using this DevTools class and we will be accessing the CDP with the help of your DevTools, which is given to us by Selenium WebDriver. Then you will be opening a WebSocket to your Chrome. This sounds a little bit technical, but it is very easy. Don't worry on that. But this is something that you should remember, that if you want to use your Selenium network interception, you have to use your DevTools. And for that, you need to have your Chrome DevTool protocol. The CDP is going to be required. All right. Now, one more thing you need to remember is that whenever you are talking about a browser, when browser is basically going to make any request, it basically has a type label marked to it. Okay. So all the various types of request which I just showed you on the UI, which was fetch, XHR, document, CSS, JS, font, image, media, manifest, all these things, right? They are the different types of request which browser can make. So this is the label. So we have the XHR, we have the fetch, we have document, script, style sheet, image, font, media, and WebSocket. Now, since we are only intercepting an API, and in most of the applications you're going to do only on the API interception, we will be using fetch. Okay. So modern API calls from JavaScript, fetch /API verify. This is what we will be requiring. Now, once we know that the resource type is going to be fetch, okay, we will be using your CDP. The next thing that is going to be a very important term that you should be remembering is the CDP domain. Now, in your CDP domains, there are two important domains. One is your network and the other is basically your fetch. Okay. Now, both these domains, whether it is a network or a fetch, they can actually observe the traffic. They can observe the requests which are happening. Okay. But only fetch is the one which can intercept and modify it. So in CDP, you will see network and fetch as an option, but you're only supposed to use fetch because fetch is the one which gives us the flexibility to read and write. When you're using network, you will only be able to observe, that is, you're only going to be able to read, but you will not be able to modify. And when we are talking about interception, we want to make changes in the response, and that is only going to happen with the help of fetch domain. Now, don't worry about where it is going to be used and all. It is just the important terminologies that you should be aware of, and just repeating it again and again so that you are aware of these terms. Now, just to go back, and coming back to the fundamentals, when you're talking about Selenium WebDriver is only going to automate the UI. But in this particular scenario, we are supposed to work on the network tab. Okay. So for that, I need the access to DevTools. With the help of Selenium WebDriver 4, now you can access DevTools. The communication channel to send the commands is basically your CDP, Chrome DevTools protocol. Perfect. Now, when we are talking about the different requests that we have, browser, whenever it is making the request, it is going to mark it with certain kind of label. The labels can be fetch, XHR, CSS, JS, font, all those various things. Out of all the requests, we are only interested in the fetch. Why? Because fetch is basically used for your modern API. The next important things, whenever you're talking about API, there is something going to be called as CDP domains. Okay, so in CDP domains, you have network and fetch popping up. With the help of network domain, you can only read, okay, the API request. but you will not be able to do any kind of modification. Whenever you want to do any kind of modification, you are going to use something which is going to be the fetch domain. I hope this part is clear to everyone. Okay. Now, the reason I keep on repeating all these things again and again, because in interview, you're supposed to talk in technical terms. Okay. You can't just simply say that I'm going to do a network interception. But how? How are you going to do that? Right? So this technical term is going to play a very important aspect in your interviews. You have to tell the entire process properly. Okay. Now, how and when you will be doing this interception? In your Chrome browser, the thing is, you can intercept a request at 2 stages. Okay. So let's assume that this is going to be my browser and browser makes an API request. So basically, I have 2 checkpoints where we can technically intercept a request. The first one, observe carefully, is going to be request stage dot request. Okay. So when we are talking about request stages, it is going to have 2 checkpoints. One is basically the request point and the other is basically going to be the response point. At these 2 places, you can do interception. So when browser makes an API request, okay, the moment the request is about to go to the server, okay, between the API request and the server, you can use request stage dot request. So intercept before the request reaches the server, you can do the interception. Okay. Server is never going to get ping and it is going to be used for mock testing. This is the one which we will be using. But let's say you want the request to reach to the server. Server is going to process the request and it is going to return us the response back. Okay. Now, request stage dot response. This is also the second checkpoint where you can do interception. So the server does respond, but we will be tampering the response. We will be tampering the response. And this tampered response, we can give it back to the browser. So either I can return the response, the mocked response from request stage dot request back to the browser, or let the request reaches the server, server is going to process it, and then I will return it back to the browser. So you technically have 2 checkpoints. Whenever you want to do your mock testing from UI, you will always be using request stage dot request. This is the point that you should remember. Now, we have seen certain terminologies. Now, I'm just going to go back in the descending order. We saw request stages. Request stages is basically going to give you the option of filtration where you are going to do interception. We will be doing the interception at request stage dot request. The second thing over here is you need to be aware of domains. You have network domain and fetch domain. Okay. And in CDP, we will always use the fetch domain. We will not use the network domain because fetch domain gives us the access to read and write, technically modify the response. And you are going to have various types of requests. We are going to just focus on the fetch request over here. All right. This is something that you should be remembering it off over here. Now, I'll be writing the code, okay, in front of you guys, and you will observe how exactly we will be doing the interception. I hope you guys have understood this part till here. Now, let's go to Eclipse and let me write this particular code for you guys. Now, I know most of you guys might be thinking, Jatin, the whole terminologies, this fetch, the domains, okay, all these things that you have been talking about, it's going completely bouncer. And I know that because for most of us, this is the first time you're hearing these terms. But the thing is, these terminologies are important because once you understand or at least hear about these terminologies, when we will be writing the code, it's not going to be, like some new terms popping up. Okay. Now, over here, guys, what I have done is I have just written the basic Selenium WebDriver code. And I want you guys to also write this particular code at your end. Now, over here, we have written WebDriver WD equal to new Chrome driver. What exactly this line is going to do is technically going to launch the browser. Then I'm saying wd.get, we are technically going to the respective URL. We are technically going to the respective website. More API, techwithjatin.com. Over here, the next thing which I'm doing over here is I'm using WebDriver wait. Most of the time, people use wd.find element to find the method elements and all, but find element is not synchronized. Okay, so if you want to have synchronization in your Selenium code, you are supposed to use WebDriver wait. Okay, if you want synchronization in your entire UI scripts and all, you are supposed to use WebDriver wait. So because we are using WebDriver wait, the code gets a little bit different. Wait.until expected condition visibility of element located by this much part. Okay. This part, what I have written over here, gives me what? It is similar to that of your find element. What does find element returns? Find elements basically return a web element. So this part which you see now, wait.until expected conditions visibility of element located by, and even here, they are technically returning me a web element. Okay. Now I'm not storing it inside any web element variable and all. I'm directly just writing send keys, and I'm then performing a key. That's all I have done. Okay. If you want, okay, for your convenience, you can actually break it down into two lines. You can write something like this. I can say web element. This is going to be username text box. Okay, Control Shift O to the import. Take this username text box, put it off over here. So you will notice that I've broken it off into two lines. Same, you can do it for this chap. Same, you can do it for this chap. This is going to be the password text box. Okay, and to the password text box, I am going to send the keys. Okay, so I'm going to just enter the password text. Okay, and here I'm just going to say this is the register button. What do you do for a register button? You technically click on it, right? Register button dot click. I'm going to cut this. I'm going to paste it over here. Control Shift F. Let's put a semicolon over here. Now I believe the code looks a little bit familiar. Let's save this. Right click, run as Java application. And you will notice that it is entering all those credentials, and obviously the government API is getting called, and I'm able to see a transaction ID, okay, which is getting generated. So what is happening over here? The moment I click on the register button, the request is going to the government server for processing. But the interviewer is telling us ki Baba, no, the request should not go to the server. What we should do? We should intercept it off. Okay. So how you're going to do the interception? We will be using your Chrome dev tools. Okay. So I want you guys to write the code till you. I hope you guys have written it off. Now, the first thing is we are supposed to have the access to the dev tools in our code. Okay, we want the access of the dev tools over here. So what we will be doing now, we will downcast now this web driver that we have. Okay, I am going to cast it to Chrome driver. Okay, so this is going to be Chrome driver, and Chrome driver is casted to WebDriver WD. Now, because you have done the casting, I can access the method of Chrome driver class. In the Chrome driver class, there is a method called getDevTools. Okay. So you're going to take your WebDriver, you're going to cast Chrome driver to it, and because of that, okay, you will be able to access the Chrome driver class methods, and I'm going to get this getDevTools. So if I'm going to bring my cursor to get DevTools returns me a DevTool reference. So I'm just going to have this DevTools reference created over here. Okay, this is the first thing. Next, what you will be doing is you will be creating a session. So I'm going to say DevTools dot create session, and this is mandatory. Okay, you want to fire commands to the Chrome DevTools, right? So for that, I need to first create the session. All right, quickly write these 2 lines of code at your end. Now guys, what we want is we have the DevTools session which is created. So if I go to the UI, just right click, click on inspect. Let's go to network. And what I want is I want to observe all the requests, okay, which is going to happen from the browser. Just to show you, I'm just going to go to this fetch /etc and I'm going to click on refresh. The moment I do that, you will see that there's a config which is getting called. And then if I go to all, probably you'll see this mock-api tech with jatin.com. This is document type. This is another a fetch request which is happening. And if I'm just going to write over here, let's say Jatin 123, whatever. And here also there is an API request that is happening. So there's like different requests which is happening. So what I want is I want to observe all the request which is going to happen from the browser. So how we can do it from the code? Now that we have the dev tools, we are going to fire the commands and observe carefully. I'm going to say dev tools dot send. This is the important thing. You're going to use the send method, and using send method, I will be able to fire commands. Okay. So I'm going to say devtools.send, and we are majorly focusing on fetch, right? So I'm going to say fetch control space and observe carefully. This is important. A domain for letting client substitute browser's network layer with client code. So remember, when we were talking about domain, I was having the network domain and the fetch domain. If you're using the network domain, you will not be able to do any kind of modification, right? So if I try to search over here, there should be something called network domain also, okay, which is somewhere over here. But the thing is, we will not be using network, because in network, you cannot do any kind of modification. If you want to do modification, you will be using fetch. So I'm going to say fetch, but which version of your DevTools you're going to use? For me, I see this version 145 is the one which works properly. And I assume you guys have the latest version of your browser. So this one you will be using. Okay, fetch is what we will be using, version 145, and we will enable .enable. Now, the moment you do enable now, enables issuing of request paused events. A request will be paused until client calls one of the fail request, fulfill request, continue request, or continue with auth. Now, what it basically means, if I enable this command, all the requests which is going to go from the browser, those are going to be paused. Okay. So observe over here, you will notice we have these 3 requests, now mock API, config, verify and all. So whenever any of these requests are going to be processed, or browser is going to try to send these requests to the server, these requests are going to be paused first. All right. That's how the interception starts. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable. But the problem that what people face, okay, while writing this particular code is using optional over here. A lot of time in interview, they ask you, have you used optional? The answer is yes. This is where you will be using optional. So we have optional list of request pattern, optional Boolean, handle auth request. Now I'm going to make a life a little bit simple. we don't want to worry about handle auth request in this particular scenario. So this I am not really worried about. Okay, if I ask you, let's say, what is the whole purpose of optional in Java? What are you going to say? Yeah, take a moment, think about it. Okay. See, you are going to use optional to avoid dash exception, null pointer exception. Remember this particular stuff. We use optional to avoid null pointer exception. So I'm going to say optional dot empty. So here I don't want to pass any value. Since I don't want to pass any value, instead of putting null, I'm going to say optional dot empty. Now over here, when I'm talking about enable method, this requires optional of list of request pattern. Optional of list of request pattern. So how do I write it? I'm going to say optional dot, not like this for sure, optional dot of list dot of, and inside this you will be creating the request pattern object. So I'll create it, observe over here. I'm going to say new request pattern. And now you will notice that there are various request pattern constructors that we have. You have to scroll to the right, and there is this version 143, 144, 145. Don't select from the network domain. Don't select from the network domain. You are interested in the fetch domain, right? So we are going to use this chap over here. And which version we will be using? Over here, we are using version 145. You will be using request pattern fetch model from version 145. This is the one. Now, over here, it requires three things. So if I'm going to bring my cursor to request pattern, it requires a URL pattern, that also in optional format. Now, it requires an optional string value. Null I cannot pass. I have to pass something in optional string value. So it is going to be very simple. I'm just going to say optional dot of star. What does this mean? That ki baba, all the request which is going to go from this particular browser, okay, will be paused. Will be paused. So this is optional of star. Star means all. Then the next one that I see, it requires resource type. Okay. Over here, you can definitely talk about whether it is a fetch resource or an XHR or whatever it is. But I'm going to keep my life pretty simple over here. I'm just going to say optional dot empty. I'm not really worried about that. But the next thing that it requires is basically request stage. Now, remember, try to remember this particular stuff. I'm not going to go back to the iPad. When we were talking about the checkpoints, okay, you can apply the checkpoints at two stages. There were two request stages. One is the request stage request and the other is request stage response, right? So here we have to tell where you are going to apply the checkpoint, okay? So over here, this also needs to be of a type of optional. So I'm simply going to say optional dot of, okay, request, okay, and be careful over here, request stage, okay, I'm going to take the version 145 dot request. All right, this is the whole code that we have written. So this is the command that I am going to fire. devtool.send fetch enable optional of list of request pattern optional of star. So star over here basically means what? All the request which is going to go from the browser to the server is going to be paused. It can be of any type, okay? And the checkpoint over here is when the request is going to go from browser to server, not from server to the browser for rendering. We are not talking about that second checkpoint. We are talking about the checkpoint when the request is going to go from browser to the server, and that's it. Okay, we are not passing any authentication and all. So this is what we have done so far. quickly write this particular code at your end. Please make sure, okay, just one line of code that you're supposed to write, but please make sure that when you're writing this particular code, you're trying to understand how this particular stuff works, okay? Quickly write it down. Now the thing over here, guys, is the requests are definitely going to be paused, but there should be a listener, right? Who is listening this entire event, okay? That the request that you are sending from the browser is getting paused. So how are we going to do that? So over here, we are going to add a listener. So I'm going to say DevTools.add listener, okay? DevTools.add listener, and you're supposed to give the event, okay? You're supposed to give the event. Event is going to be pretty simple. I'm going to say fetch, okay, dot pause, and I'm going to say like this request paused. So there is a listener that I'm going to create that, hey, all the requests which is going to go from the server, which are getting paused, you're supposed to listen to them, okay? And over here, these requests, okay, we will be analyzing. So request, arrow, curly bracket. So one by one, all these requests, I'm going to analyze it off over here. So observe carefully what I'm writing. Now, over here, I can simply say system.out.println. I'm going to say request dot get me the request dot, let's say I want to have the method. So get me the method with what this request is having. The second thing that I need is the URL. Okay. So over here, this is what my intercepted, okay, message is going to be. So all these requests are going to be intercepted, and I'm going to get the method as well as the URL. So let's save this. Let's click on the play button and observe what happens. Let's click on play. See, browser is getting launched. That page is not getting loaded right now. Okay, why? Because there was a request which was going to the server. Okay, that get me that document page because we need to show it over here. That request has been paused. So over here, observe carefully. If I go and observe my console, intercepted. The get request, HTTPS mock API tech with Jatin is getting paused. Intercepted, another one, HTTP mock API tech with Jatin.com. So over here, what is happening is it is pausing the request to go to the server. And those requests are technically getting the URL. This is the URL and this is the method. It's a get method and this is the URL. They are technically getting printed on my console. I want you guys to write this particular code so far. Okay, it's a very simple thing that I've written over here. Quickly write it down at your end. All right, guys, I hope you have written the code so far. Now the thing over here, guys, with this listener that we have just added, we are able to capture all the requests which browser is actually making, and it's technically sending to the server. Those requests are not sent to the server yet, but over here we are printing those requests, okay, those URLs as well as the method on our console. Now, what we want is we want to check whether the requested URL is having the word verify or not. Technically, the government API that we're looking for. So, if I just go back to the main application over here. So, over here, you will notice that we have this verify request which was made by the browser, right? So, if you notice, the request URL is what? http://mock API techwithjatin.com verify. So, over here, the URL is going to have this endpoint or has this particular word called verify. Okay. So we want to check if the requested URL is going to have the word verify. This particular request we will not be sending to the server. Okay. The dev tools is actually going to mock the response and it is going to send the mock response back to the server for processing. So this transaction ID, which was getting generated by this verify endpoint of this government application, is going to get mocked. okay, we will be getting some fake number that we will only give. Okay. So what we will be doing now is we need to first check whether the request URL is having the word verify or not. And how we will be doing it off? Very simple. Because we are already getting the URL, we will store this particular chap in a variable. That's the first thing that I can do. String URL. Okay, is this. Now, I'm going to have a conditional check. I'm going to say if URL dot contains, if the URL contains the word verify, okay, if it contains the word verify, we need to intercept and mock the response. Obviously, this is something that we need to do. If it is not containing the word verify, then what? You can process it off. Okay, that is something that we want to process it. So how we will process it off? We are going to go in the else block, and what we will be doing, we will be sending a command. Okay, so I'm going to say devtools.send. Now understand carefully. When I was using fetch enable, enables issuing request paused event. Okay. So when you're doing fetch.enable, it is going to do what? It is going to pause the request. A request will be paused until the client calls fail request, fulfill the request, or continue the request. So what we want to continue the request, because if it is going to have this particular word verify, we need to do something. We need to mock the response and give them back. But if it is not containing the word verify, we will continue the request. So what we will do, we will say fetch dot continue the request. And continue request basically require the request ID, okay, the URL, the method, and all those things over here. So we will click on this continue request, okay, and it is pretty simple. Don't worry over here. All you are going to do is you are going to be requiring the request ID. And from where I'm going to get the request ID? Pretty simple. From the request only. I'm going to say request.get request ID. Rest, all the stuff, I'm not really interested to modify or probably to give those information. So I'm just going to pass optional.empty. So we'll just put over here optional.empty. Okay. Let's put these chaps over here quickly. And sort it. So this is the stuff, and it is going to take care of all the requests which is not going to have the word verify inside that. Okay. But if it is going to have the word verify, we need to do something. Okay. So I'm just going to give a message over here. System.out.println need to mock this API response. Okay. And that's it. Let me just save this and let it run over here. Right click, run as Java application. And observe carefully. Okay. Over here, the page got loaded. It has definitely clicked on the register button and all those things have happened. And look carefully. It has intercepted all the requests. Okay. Mock API tech with Jatin. This was a request which was made. Okay. First it was HTTPS, then it went to HTTP, then config. Okay. This was also intercepted. Fav icon. This was also intercepted. This was the request which was sent by the browser to the server. Okay. But observe carefully. The moment over here we have verify popping up. What it said? Need to mock this API response. Okay, need to mock this API response. So now it is going into this if block and it is printing this need to mock this API response. So here I need to mock the response and return back. All right. Now, before I do that, I want you guys to write this particular code quickly. Let me just zoom out. Okay. And observe these things at your end. See, don't just observe my code and all that. So it's working because I have planned the whole session. The thing is, when you are writing the code, it's your job also to observe how the program is getting executed. All right. Now, I hope you have written this particular code. Now, what we need to do is, if it is going to have this verify as an endpoint in the URL, what we need to do? We need to do something. We need to mock the response. So for that, I need to have the main response over here. So over here, if I go to the response, okay, this is the main request. Okay, I can just hit enter and probably I can just fill some data quickly. Jatin 123. Let's click on register. This is where the verify request was made. And if I'm going to click over here, go to the response. This is the response which the server has given me. Okay. I'm literally going to copy this. Okay. This response technically came from the server, right? Now, inside this particular if block, I am going to create a variable string JSON response. Let me just zoom in for you guys. And we're going to use triple quotes. Okay, three double quotes popping up. And over here, we're going to paste the response. Let me just go back, copy this, and I'm going to paste it over here. Control Shift F. So it's better from the readability perspective. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the transaction ID. Okay. And I'll probably just say like transaction tech hyphen with Jatin. Okay. This is success. Use amount is going to be, let's say 0. Okay. You want to put $1, you can do that. And there's going to be some timestamp. And I'm just going to attach the word mock. Okay. So this is a fake transaction. Okay. The amount that is getting deducted now is 0. Okay. And if you want, you can just put 0 over here. So $0 also. This is the response that we will be sending back. So over here, you are seeing all this data. Na? So this data, which was technically being taken from this verify API, now it will be taken from this JSON response that we have created. All right. So this is what we need to do. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say DevTools dot send another command fetch dot. This is going to be fulfill request, I believe. Okay, this is the one that we will be using. Fulfill the request. Provide the response to the request. This is what we need to do. We need to first give the request ID. So request ID is going to be like from request.getRequestID. Then it requires an integer response code. Technically, you have to give some status code. So I'm going to give over here as 200. Next, what it requires, let's bring the cursor over here one more time. Let's do a control space. So it requires a response header, binary response header, and body that we need to pass. This chap over here we need to pass, and response phrase. For response phrase, binary response header and response header, I'm really fine. It's just going to go optional dot empty. So that's something that we're going to quickly pass it off. So I'm just going to take this, put it over here, and here. So only one place is left, which is the body, which is the second last, okay, parameter that I'm supposed to pass. And that I need to pull it off over here. But observe carefully, when you're looking at the body, right, it is optional string body. Okay. I can't just technically take this JSON response and put it off over here. Okay. If you do that, okay, let's put a semicolon. You see, it's not working because it does not require a string. It requires an optional string. So what we will be doing is we will say optional dot of JSON response. This is something that we will write it out. Let's save this. Okay. Let me just right click and run as Java application one more time. Let's observe what happens. All right. You will notice that it did not process that particular stuff. Okay. So over here, if I just bring this guy up, it says intercepted. There is a verify request which is popping up. But the thing is, it is not taking this particular response. Okay. The one which we are passing. And there is a reason for that. Whenever you are technically passing this JSON response, it has to be passed in base 64 encoding. Okay, so that is something that we need to do now. But before we do that, I want you guys to quickly write this particular code at your end. I hope you have written the code. Now, the thing is, the reason we are not getting this particular response on the UI is because this JSON response is a normal string, but your DevTools require it in a particular format, which is the base 64 encoding. That is something that we need to do. And to be honest, it's very simple. There is a class which is called as this base 64 class, which belongs to java.util. Over there, you're going to have this particular method called getEncoder. Okay. And you are going to use encode to string, but you're supposed to pass this byte array. Okay. So that's something that we're going to do. So we're going to take this JSON response. Okay. Dot get bytes. Okay. But you will also pass this character set. That is going to be your standard character set dot UTF-8. This is important. Okay. And done. So this technically is going to encode it into the base 64. And this whole thing which you see is technically going to give me another string, but it is going to be in the base 64 format. Okay. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to paste it over here. I'm going to say base 64. Okay. Take this and you put it off over here, save it. Okay. Right click, run as Java application. And now observe the output. You will notice that the transaction, what you're seeing over here is mock transaction, tech with Jatin. Status code is 200, okay. But the amount over here is 0. Meaning we haven't actually hit the verify API. Just to show you one more time properly, what I'll do is I'll save this and I'll run this particular program one more time. Okay, so let's click on OK and observe carefully. You will notice that the transaction that it has picked up is of the mock one. This is the response, that we have set over here, mock transaction tech with Jatin. All right. So this is how you intercept your APIs with the help of Selenium WebDriver and CDP. That's the most important thing. The Selenium WebDriver is only going to take care of the automation of clicking on the buttons and entering the text. But the main thing over here is if you want to intercept the network calls and all, you will be using the DevTools. It's a very important scenario, guys, and something that you should really be having in your challenges bucket list. Because when, let's say, interview asks you, Ki Baba, tell me the challenges, you have these critical scenarios that you can really use to impress the interviewer in your interviews. Okay. So that's it, guys. That's it for this particular class. Okay. I hope you understood something new. Now I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to mark your attendance, and till then, take care. Bye-bye.